Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later on, a one-on-one with Secretary of State Scott Gessler about the new election laws. But first, you know him, you love him. If you watch Channel 12, you just can't get enough of him. Dave Kopel from the Independence Institute, glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I want to talk about what went down last Friday, which was a pretty major event in the history of Colorado and also gun control around the country. The Independence Institute, you as the lead attorney, and I can't believe this, 54 sheriffs as plaintiffs suing the state to overturn the gun laws that were just passed in the last legislative session.
That's right, 54 sheriffs as well as disabled rights organizations, outdoor organizations such as Outdoor Buddies, which is the state's leading outdoor group to help disabled people enjoy the outdoors, the Colorado Outfitters Association, which is the trade association for Colorado's hunting guides, people in the licensed firearms dealers, a large array of peace officers and peaceable citizens.
All right. So you're not just a lawyer on television, you're actually a lawyer in real life. And these people came to the Independence Institute, came to you and said, we've got to do something. Let's start at the beginning. If you were sleeping during the legislative session, it was one of the most fascinating. This was the first time I've seen major gun laws passed, and out of all the furor after what happened in Connecticut and here in Aurora, it was Colorado, one of the few states and the first in the West to pass gun laws, real restrictions. There are two bills in particular that you're challenging. What are they? What do they do first, in the most simple terms?
These are both bills written by the Michael Bloomberg lobby, which did all the lobbying on these bills in the Colorado legislature. One is a House Bill 1224, and that is a comprehensive magazine ban. The magazine is a box or tube that stores the ammunition for a firearm, and it's an essential component to the function of a handgun or rifle. House Bill 1224 outlaws most magazines currently owned in Colorado. It outlaws magazines larger than 15 rounds directly, and it also outlaws almost all smaller magazines as well, because it has language that says anything that is designed to be readily converted is banned. And the way that's interpreted by the sponsor, Representative Rhonda Fields, and by Governor Hickenlooper is that normal magazines, say a 10-round magazine that has, or a 5-round, that has a removable base plate, the part of the bottom that you take off so you can clean the magazine, replace the spring, a removable base plate on a box magazine or a removable end cap on a tube magazine. That itself makes the magazine illegal.
This is an important bit of information here. For those of people who aren't familiar with guns, and I understand that, I used to be like that. You hear a magazine, you could be like Diana DeGette and actually think that with a gun magazine you use it and you throw it away. But in fact, it's much more like a Pez dispenser. You can use it many, many times. But most of these magazines, almost all of them, have a removable part on the bottom so you can get out the spring, clean it, replace the spring because they wear out. And because of that, they can be expanded if you wish. Therefore, all those become illegal as well to sell or to transfer under this law.
That's right. So the 8-round magazine you might have for your handgun or the 6-round magazine for your rifle, those become outlawed as well.
Good stuff. Fun stuff. And real quickly, the second law was the background check as well.
The second law, yes, and that's a unworkable system of background checks. First of all, it's just oppressive and extreme in some of the things it controls. For example, saying if your friend borrows your rifle to go hunting for 4 days, you've got to go find a firearms dealer and go through a background check just to loan him the rifle. Or if, let's say, you're a family farm, which these days is organized, they're mostly organized as a corporation, and the corporation buys a gun. By this law, you've, say, got 7 family members and 5 farmhands who would use the gun at some point. According to the background check bill, you've got to do 12 separate background checks, which will cost $22 each, just for that family farm corporation to acquire the gun.
Let me go through these, and let's start real generally, and then let's go backwards. Both of these are very unworkable. I mean, they're just bad. They're ridiculously worded. Beyond that, though, you're challenging the constitutionality of these measures. In other words, if Rhonda Fields didn't write this bill in a way that made almost every magazine banned, or the continuous possession clause she put in there, which said you can have one of your old magazines, but you have to hold it all on your own. If your wife or your friend uses it, you both committed a crime. This is just ridiculous wording. Let's get to the constitutional part of this, and let's start off with the one that I think people scratch their head when they hear about, which is, what's wrong with a background check? One of these laws is to require a background check, not just when you buy a gun. Right now, if I go to a gun store, I buy a gun, I go through a background check, it goes to CBI, they say I'm okay, I get the gun. But if I buy that same gun from you, I don't have to go through that background check. Why shouldn't I have to go through that background check? That just seems commonsensical.
Well, the sheriff's lawsuit doesn't take a position pro or con on the scenario you just described about the constitutionality in the abstract, but what it does say is the actual system that was set up by this bill will never function, and it will be close to impossible for citizens to actually get that check done. Because what they have to do is you can only get that check by going to a licensed firearms dealer. Most licensed firearms dealers are home-based businesses. They don't want strangers in their home. If you go,
stop there for a second, because a lot of people don't quite get this, in that it sounds great to have a background check, but somebody has to implement the background check. The bill says somebody who has a firearms license from the federal government has to do that. Most of those people really are mom and pops who sell some guns, buy some guns around their kitchen table. We see gun stores around, but there are many more dealers who have regular jobs, but on the weekend they might sell a gun or two, and it is a home-based business.
And they typically sell to people in their social network, their hunting club, their friends.
It's the firearm equivalent of a Tupperware party, right? You buy it from somebody, or Avon. All right, so I could go to that person and say, "Will you please run this check because I want to buy Dave's gun?" Why would he be adverse to that?
Well, whether it's the home-based federal firearms licensee or a storefront one, by the bill, they're only allowed to charge $10. And in exchange for that $10, they've got to supervise filling out a 2-page federal paperwork form, which is, if they make errors on that, it's extremely perilous. They could lose their license, actually face felony prosecution. So they're taking a big risk just by doing that. And then under Colorado's so-called instant check, which has been underfunded and badly implemented by past legislatures and this governor.
A week-long wait at one point.
It's been up to, it was as long as 9 days, and delays of hours are routine. So now you're a firearms store, you've got some guy coming in, 2 people coming in for a service for which you can charge at most $10. It's going to take you a while to get the paperwork filled out, and then you may be on the phone or watching your computer for 3 hours waiting for that check to process. And meanwhile, you got to monitor these guys while they're in your store. It's a lot of trouble for only $10. And what we've seen is the vast majority of federal firearms licensees say they won't do it for $10. So the people who want to get the check done are going to have a difficult, perhaps impossible time finding somebody to actually do it.
I think something people might not understand, those people who have these FFLs, federal firearms licenses, if they're going to do a background check, everything has to be spotless on this form. So for the $10 in rewards they can get, the risk they have if something is wrong on the form or somebody writes something in the wrong way could be the loss of their license. Not what I would call a great risk to reward factor.
Not for $10. In contrast, if they're selling a firearm out of their own inventory, say a gun they bought for $250 at wholesale and they're selling it for $475 now, then it's worthwhile for them to do that because they're making a substantial profit on the sale, not just the $10 cap that the legislature created for private sales.
In the future, if these dealers say, it's not worth the risk, I'm not doing it, there's nothing in the law that forces him to do the background check. When you and I say, I'm going to sell my gun to you, or the other way around, would you do this? He's not forced to do so. So where do we go if the large majority of these guys don't want to do this?
That's the sheriff's point, is whatever laws you have, for them to be fair and constitutional, there has to be a practical way for people to actually comply with them. And on this one, there's not really.
Talk about the gun ban. That's 1224, or excuse me, the magazine ban, which basically bans guns. People don't get that, but if I can't buy a magazine, and most magazines will be outlawed by this, the gun I have is pretty useless.
That's right. Or if your existing rifle that, say, has a 7-round magazine, that magazine wears out, you're not going to be able to get a replacement because, you know, maybe that rifle was in production in the 1970s, but nobody's making brand new magazines for it. So, you know, you can get on the used market a replacement magazine for that, but that's illegal in Colorado because it has the removable floor plate for cleaning.
So I couldn't buy one from somebody else.
That's right.
All right. Why do your plaintiffs, the sheriffs and the other shooters, why do they have a problem with this? I mean, I would think sheriffs would think all of a sudden all these guns will be gone. Sheriffs are there to protect people in their counties. You know, every sheriff was part of a statement during the legislative session against these two bills, every single one. And by the way, those are the only directly elected law enforcement in Colorado.
Well, district attorneys are also elected, although they're at a different phase of law enforcement. But as you say, the sheriffs are the front line of law enforcement, and their view is that these laws are unconstitutional. That's the worst problem with them, that they're unenforceable, and that they're actually harmful to public safety. Because the sheriff's viewpoint is you want to get guns out of the wrong hands, and at the same time you want to have guns in the right hands, because these sheriffs, some of whom have immensely large counties to cover, no, they can't be everywhere at once to always protect people at the time of a crime. People need to have the ability to protect themselves. So here's one way that these bills actually harm public safety. Let's say the husband owns a Smith & Wesson handgun with a 13-round magazine. That's one gun, one magazine in the family. It's got a removable base plate. He hasn't extended or done anything. Maybe he doesn't even know that extenders exist. But under this bill, say he goes out of town for the weekend and he tells his wife, you can borrow my gun if you need to for self-defense or if you want to go target shooting. Well, it's okay for the wife to borrow the gun, but she can't have the magazine that goes with it, so she can't have a functional gun.
Otherwise, they'll both be criminals.
Exactly. And so now the wife and the children, they're left, as a practical matter, defenseless. That's harmful to public safety.
One of my brother, as you know, does volunteers at a shooting range as a range officer. His job is safety, first and foremost. And now after this law, if he sees somebody who's mishandling a gun or if there's a malfunction with the gun, he's got to decide, will he handle that gun and clear the malfunction and show the person how to do it correctly and have a safe range, or will he not so that he doesn't break the law? So it's safety versus becoming a criminal on this law. Incredible.
Right, and on the background checks bill, it's fine for the person at the firing line at the range to hand him the gun because they're at the shooting range, but not the gun with the magazine in it, because then both people would be criminals.
You can borrow my car, but the tank's on empty and you're not allowed to fill it up. Real quickly, running out of time, is there a constitutional aspect to this bill as well?
Sure. Everything I just said violates the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. It also violates the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, partly because some of these things are unconstitutionally vague. And as applied to disabled people, who are some of the plaintiffs, it violates the Americans with Disabilities Act. Under that federal law, they're entitled to an accommodation in the exercise of their important constitutional rights. So even if these bills were constitutional in general, they're still violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act as applied to disabled persons.
One of my friends has only one hand. He prefers a gun, his Glock 17, that has 17 rounds in it because he can't reload quickly if he ever needed to. Real quickly, Tell me, what are your chances? What do you think? Are you optimistic? I know you can't call it, but this is a good case.
I'm as optimistic as you can be in the sense that we've got the facts on our side, the law on our side, and we have 54 sheriffs and a very broad coalition of other great Colorado citizens on our side.
You're a fool. Think that the law is on your side that you'll win. You haven't been in court enough. Thank you, Dave. Stay tuned.